There's a Finnish phrase I've come to love, which is "Aita vitsi, kirati a." It translates simply to take your time. The thing school sadly never teaches you is the art of time, along with the inner politics and relationships of the workplace. I've personally experienced jobs I've had in the past where I was really happy with the job title itself, however, absolutely despised the people I worked with. So inevitably, I ended up leaving or being fired because I couldn't stand it any longer. I often hated the egos, the jealousy, the competition, the politics, and the manipulation that often comes from being in the workplace. It can be a very toxic environment that's often been an extremely challenging space for me to navigate successfully. If I'm being radically honest and transparent here, I often find the jobs I've experienced to be really boring and mentally unstimulating. So it's a suboptimal solution. At the end of the day, life can be fucking hard. So why keep attaching yourself to environments which do nothing but drag you down and make you feel pretty shit about yourself most of the time? You know, life is short, but it's also extremely long if you don't utilize your time here on earth effectively. However, it's important to recognize life doesn't have to start off the way it did for me. If you're just starting out, give yourself permission to experience life first. And I mean do it properly before you can really dial in and focus on something with real purpose that's close to you. If you're plugged in to what you want from life, if you're strategic and know who you are, you can often find ways to avoid common trap doors that may stifle your existence. When I was 16, in terms of my music and things I wanted to achieve in my career, I always thought that I had all the time in the world to achieve the things that I wanted to do with my life. Especially as I felt very fortunate that from a very young age, I had discovered the sound of music. Therefore, I really thought I'd had it all figured out. I can see it all in front of me. Which as a result, everything from that point in school felt kind of perfunctory, meaningless. Everything just kind of seemed to roll off the shoulders. And it gave me the advantage throughout school of feeling fearless in a way. Because as long as I didn't give up, even when I met failure, it still felt that it was only a matter of time before I was going to land where I wanted to be. Which I will say I still feel is accurate to some degree. I do honestly believe that no matter what age you are, if you have a vision for something you want to do, then as long as you never give up, in a manner of speaking, you will end up where you want to be in life, as long as you're doing it with intent. And intent very much being the operative word here. As speaking from experience, and somebody that's done a lot, who's failed a lot, and who is maybe slightly older than some of you watching, your tolerance for risk does decline and change over time. And what I mean by this is the desire to always be grinding at 100 miles per hour and how ambitious you are in nature does slightly shift and decline as you get older. Which is something if you're in your 20s and early 30s to mid 30s, it is something to be mindful of. You know, just be aware of it. If I look back, I can identify with specific moments where I allowed myself to get too distracted with self-destructive behaviours, especially during my 20s in London. I think it's fair to say it felt like a playground, a magic carpet ride. You know, how many places can you name that on a Wednesday night you can go out and watch jazz till 3 a.m. in a packed house and then party into the early hours of the morning at the click of your fingers? You know, for somebody in their 20s with their whole life in front of them, like I did, that can be extremely attractive. Which I can say now with a sense of grace and peace. It led me to losing my way at times. I was living without intent, you could say. And I didn't always realize it at the time, I don't think. And that did throw me off my path and set me back in life for a while. So where you put your time is more important than the time you spend doing something sometimes. I believe it's important to strike a good balance between enjoying your life and living in the moment. Being free. Things that were once really important to you and may have been your main priority once upon a time starts to become less important, and you start to have new things and maybe more, and other things that maybe take their place and become more exciting to you. And you may find yourself starting to dream a little smaller in life in some ways, or at least that's maybe how it might feel that way on the surface, which I think is a really positive thing and is just a natural evolution of being human. That isn't to say you should just go do it. That isn't to say you should just go do a day job you hate just to have money to pay for things in life you probably don't even need. They're just temporary moments of happiness and often add absolutely no substance or long-term value. I've worked many jobs I don't like over the years just to either pay my rent or because I felt like it was the right thing to be doing at that time. And I can tell you guys, there's often nothing there. It certainly hasn't led to me being any better off in my life, other than burning out on a regular basis, which has led to a lot of cynicism and even feelings of hopelessness. And if anything, those experiences working those kind of dead-end jobs just to get by, I think it probably led to taking more of what was good about me and leaving more of what was bad. So if you're somebody watching and feel like you are only working a job or taking a path in your life because it feels like it's what you should be doing. And I say what you should in quotes there because, you know, or maybe let me frame it this way. Or you're hoping it might pleasantly surprise you with something good later on down the road. Maybe that's why you might be doing it. However, I do not personally advise this approach. You often end up becoming a lamb or a sheep to the rest of the world. And it can sometimes get to the point where you barely recognize yourself in the mirror anymore. But we're all dealt different hands in life. I'm fully aware of this. The best way I heard it once described during the pandemic is some of us are wait, let me get this right. Some of us are in yachts. Some of us are in little boats. Some of us are in life jackets. And some of us are simply drowning. You have to play the hand you're dealt the best way you know how. If you have a family to support, then you might have to look at things a little differently from time to time. You know, you might have to rearrange the furniture, so to speak, in a slightly different way because you have other people to think about. And maybe for you, it may look like focusing on your 4 or your 5 core values as a person. What are you drawn to in your spare time? What type of person do you want to be? What are the 5 things you care about? Write them down on a piece of paper. And write down as well, what don't you care about? Because that's equally important. Sometimes it can just be an elimination process. You know, maybe if you want to pursue something in a job, but you have a family, maybe it might look like taking on a part-time job instead to balance the scales so you kind of have a bit more of a 50-50 balance of what you're enjoying versus what you don't enjoy. Which it may bring in less money financially, but it allows for you to carve out space for something you deeply are drawn to, that you can slowly work towards, planting little seeds to help flourish later on, which over time replaces your part-time job. Slow, they call it this, I've heard it said that it's the slow atomic daily habits over time that transform you into something else. You know, we've talked about this in previous videos, guys, haven't we? People are cluing in. People are cluing in to the simple notion that working harder does not mean a better life. It's just not the way things work, sadly. However, let's say you're like me, with very little to lose. So you decide to really strive for the sun, with something you're deeply passionate about, only to find you fail. At least you now have a really cool story to tell people. You can live with the fact that you know you were brave enough to try, to take a leap of faith. And that is just as valuable, guys. That is not just me saying this. Because now, whether you realize it or not, you are now somebody. You are now somebody with an edge. Because like art and creativity, when you see something through to completion, it gives you the permission to try something else, regardless of the outcomes. Because then you have something to use, something to really channel into a new dream. a new life, a new start. So it's all connected. Always remember that. It's all connected. And who knows, as you're on the path to something great, something else better might even come along. Something you hadn't even thought of. Or you try enough things, or you throw enough things at the wall, of which some don't work out, but you get to a place where you feel liberated. And you're able to rebalance, renegotiate with yourself. So you roll the dice again and see where things land. Life is just a game we play at the end of the day, guys. And sometimes we lose and sometimes we win. And it just keeps going round and round until we die. So enjoy yourself. Definitely don't take things too seriously all the time. We will get more into the details around this in another video. However, I'm in a position right now where I have a kaleidoscope of art projects and ideas I'm working on, all simultaneously coming together at once. So my challenge now is looking at how I want to roll them out and present them all, and when. It's the marketing stuff, I guess you could say, which I'll be honest is not really my skill set, unfortunately. So that will take a little time to really execute for me. But the important thing is, it's something I'm deeply interested and engaged in right now, where I am at this moment in my life. And I think people will really connect with it. I just hope it does find its audience, which again is kind of a luck of the roll of the dice as well. And the main issue with the notion of progress, I think, for a lot of us, is it often feels slow and a little lonely sometimes. The reason it sometimes feels slow, I think, is because it's real and requires patience. Patience. And most of the time, you don't even know if it's going to work out the way that you imagined it would. And patience, all the patience you're given this thing and the hard work, you don't even know if it's going to lead to anything on the other side. Exactly. And some days, your ego might step in and try to get you to quit. It might try to take you down. You know, we taught Stephen Pressfield in The War of Art, he talks about the ego a lot. And, you know, most of it comes down to trying to get out of your own way. That's a big part of it. And just little micro daily seeds that you're planting gradually. And yeah, your ego will try and take you down at times, and it will try and get you to quit what you're doing. But that's when you keep going. Because the simple truth is, what else is there? That's what I'm learning. That's something else better out there. The grass is always greener. That's a construct we create a lot of times in our heads. It doesn't exist. And often for me, I haven't always realized that. And I've tried the self-destructive method of sitting in a dark room by myself with a bag of cocaine and a bottle of vodka, getting totally blasted out of my mind, going off somewhere into into the stratosphere, fantasy land. And I'm here to tell you guys that doesn't work either. It might be fun for a while now and again. It can get you there on some days, and it can kind of be maybe a much welcome distraction. However, it's not a good long-term solution. And if anything, it's a suboptimal solution. So in terms of where I'm at right now, some of the things I've discussed about what I'm doing, consider this a snapshot in one's life. A snapshot. A cautionary tale, but not the finished story. What I will leave you with today is this. The simple truth is only you know when the time is right, when a move, an idea, or a risk actually aligns. But it's important to recognize timing in a creative life. It isn't just about career decisions, guys. It's about everything else too. Your friendships. Surround yourself with cool people you want to be like. Your family. Your other interests. Your experiences outside of your career. The time you spend alone. Your environment. You're a product of your environment. I've always believed this. And sometimes when I haven't been surrounded by who I am, by those people, it's made me deeply unhappy. So I've had to learn a little about how to cultivate that environment I'm sometimes seeking to ensure I'm living right, to keep me on the right path, and to keep me plugged in to something bigger than myself. All of these are connected. All of these things, they're all connected. They require care and attention, and all of them shape your unique outlook and have an influence on your happiness. They're not distractions from the work. They are the work. So if there's any secret I've come to believing, guys, it's the slow burn. Learn to take a moment to stop and look around every once in a while. And let life happen. As opposed to always focusing on the outcome and trying to control the narrative all the time. There's absolutely no rush. And in my experience, rushing anything in life can often lead to missed opportunities or quiet regrets. And at the end of the day, we are so fucking lucky just to be alive. And there is far less urgency required than we're led to believe. So let's leave it there for today, guys. And hopefully this was just more of a stream of consciousness today and things I've been thinking about in the last few days as I've been getting myself wired and charged up to execute some things. So hopefully some of that is landing with you today. Hopefully some of my words have landed. Like and subscribe. Tell me what you think, guys. Where are you at in your life right now? What's lighting you up? Or what's dragging you down? Leave a comment in the video below, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.